It has always been a dream of mine to own a large collection of books and to have a large TBR of possibilities to pull from. But while I love having a lot of books, I currently don't want to add any more bookshelves into my home, which means that these stacks of books that I currently have on the floor are a problem. So I somehow need to get all of these books from the floor onto my shelves, which are currently at capacity, which is where this series comes in. Throughout 2024, I'm going to be stuffing these stacks onto my shelves through any means possible. This month, I will be using my old TBR game, Becca's Bookopoly, to select the books that I will read for this video. The easiest way to start may be to read them, but if I then decide that I want to keep them, I will need to choose another book from my shelves to either read or unhaul. The episode will end when the original books chosen from the stacks and all subsequent ones pulled from shelves have made their way to either their new home on a shelf or into my unhaul pile. The stacks may change throughout the year as I organically read, unhaul and rearrange my shelves. The pool of books to choose from may change slightly as things get moved around my library, or the pile could shrink with a big unhaul, or even grow if I buy too many books, but the overall goal remains the same. By the end of 2024, the stacks have to go. In episode 4, we scrapped 4 books and we managed to shelve 2, and we will be starting episode 5 with 71 books in the stacks. Welcome, my guys, to episode 5 of Shelve It or Scrap It. It has been exactly a week, I think, since I finished filming episode 4, so the stacks are pretty much the same as they were. I think that I've taken a couple of paperbacks out because I was moving some things around, but we do still have 71 books in the stack, so we have a significant amount still to get through. And you know, after last episode, I'm feeling a little bit dubious going into episode 5, because if you saw episode 4, you will know we started real strong and then we just rapidly descended into a string of DNFs. If you haven't seen episode 4, the link to the playlist will be down in the description box so that you guys can catch up if you so wish. Speaking of catching up and this series as a whole, Shelve It or Scrap It is now the most popular series that I've ever made on my channel, so thank you so much to you guys for that, because obviously your support is what makes it so popular. But I was thinking that we should maybe add a little bit of a twist into episode 5, and so I thought it might be cool if we combined my most popular series that I've ever made on my channel with my second most popular series that I ever made on my channel. So this is Becca's Bookopoly, and we are going to be playing Bookopoly for this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, which is very exciting for some of you guys as well, I'm sure, but also for me. I am hyped. If you guys don't know what Becca's Bookopoly is, I will link a video. I'm not sure which one yet, but I will link a video down, as well as the Bookopoly playlist, down in my description box, where there will be a full tour of every square on this board and a kind of overview of how Bookopoly works. But essentially, Becca's Bookopoly was a TBR game that I played for 4 or 5 years, I think. It was a long time. And after I was kind of done with a rigid structured TBR, I did a few vlogs where I used this board to pick the books that I was going to be reading next. So the Bookopoly vlog rules from the last vlogs that I did are still going to be in place for this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It. I am going to be reading or attempting to read at least 5 books in this vlog, because back when we did Bookopoly TBRs, we had at least 5 books on the TBR. Now I say at least because if I roll a double at any point, I either have to roll for another prompt and try and combine 2 prompts into 1 book, or I have to add another book and read at least 6, 7, 8 books in this vlog. I am hoping that is not going to happen. I'm hoping that we just have the 5, because, you know, I have an idea of like what day I would like to post this video. But this is how we're going to be selecting our books this episode. So when we play Bookopoly, when I play on a board, I always start my next game on the board on the square that I finished the last game on. So I have been back and I've checked the last vlog where I used this board. This one was the last Bookopoly board that I made that wasn't a readathon board, and we ended on, I think, this other space. So we are going to be playing this as a continuation of Bookopoly, not as a brand new game. But I think that's pretty much all I need to tell you guys. I probably could explain more, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get straight into our first roll, and then if you're unfamiliar with Bookopoly, I'm pretty sure you're going to pick it up as we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, the last space that I landed on the last time I played with this board was this other space. Roll number 1 for Shelve It or Scrap It. 11. I'm just gonna rotate. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A sequel is, oh oh, this might work. So genuinely something that I was a little bit concerned about when I decided to do Bookopoly for this round is that I'm not 100% sure that all of the things that I have, like all of the prompts that I have on the board, are going to be applicable or have a book in this stack that will actually fill them. And this is one that I really thought was going to be a problem, and I was going to have to find some kind of workaround, but I'm pretty sure that there is exactly one sequel in these stacks. I'm gonna check quickly to make sure, but I'm sure there's only one. There is just one. And it is Glow by Raven Kennedy. So typically I don't keep sequels in the stacks. I keep sequels with the books that they go with, like from the rest of the series. But I picked this one up in a hardback because it was half price at Waterstones, and I have the indie paperbacks of the first 3 books in this series. But when this one was released, like I'm up to date aside from this one. So when this one was released, I wanted to read it, but I didn't want this hardback. So because it was half price, I picked it up to read, and then I was going to replace it with a paperback. Fast forward like over a year. Obviously the paperback of this is now out, so I didn't need to buy this in the first place, which I mean is standard. I should know by now that if I buy a book, that doesn't actually mean that I'm ever going to read it anytime soon. So this one is going to be a definite scrap because I only have it to read it, and then it's going straight in my unhaul pile. But this one is the 4th book in the Plated Prisoner series, and I was actually thinking about this one recently when I was reading, what was it? Was it Daughter of No Worlds? I'm not sure, but this has definitely been on my mind. So this one is book 4 in a fantasy romance series that is a retelling of King Midas. We're following a woman called Auren who is like Midas's most prized possession, and that is because she herself has been gold touched. So like her skin, her hair, everything is gold, and she is kept in a cage in Midas's palace. But the thing is that she actually likes it this way because she had such a terrible time when she was free in the world and people treated her terribly, that she would rather be protected in this cage instead of somewhere where people could hurt her. So she's also in love with Midas, but the thing about this series is that it throws up a million red flags immediately, where you kind of know that something is up, but as the series unfolds, or as the first book at least unfolds, you kind of get to the bottom of what it is. Content warnings in this series for like sexual assault. I think in the last book I read there was quite a gory instance of like torture or mutilation. So definitely look up a full list of content warnings if you are intending to get into this series, because it is a pretty dark one. But the kind of catalyst for this is that Midas is wanting to take over some of the territories around the one that he already controls, and he's actually only a king by marriage, which is the interesting thing. But as he's riding off to these new places that he wants to conquer, he wants to take all of his prized possessions with him. And as Auren is traveling to this new location, the caravan that she's traveling in is attacked by bandits, and she ends up being imprisoned and having to try and find her way back to Midas. So this one is actually not a bad pick because I am really behind on my goal for 2024, which is to read twice as many sequels as series that I've started. Shelve It or Scrap It is definitely not helping that goal, so it's good to get this one in here, so at least one of the books that I'm reading for this video will be a sequel. That being said though, she's not small. She's not a small one. At least I know it's not dense because I have some experience with this series, but I also know that this is probably not going to be a DNF because it's book 4 in a series that I already really enjoy. So I guess I better make a start on this one because it's going to take me a long time.
Been to California, never been to LA, so I'll stay home and write these songs, pretend I'll make it someday.
So it's taken me a little while, but I have finally made a decent dent in this behemoth. I'm 214 pages into it, and we had a bit of a slow start because you know how when you start a sequel, normally there's a really obvious, irritating recap that's very clearly, like it feels unnatural in the way that it's very obviously recapping the important things that you need to know from the book before. Normally those irritate me, like I don't need them. This is an instance where I really could have done with one because it's been so long since I read book 3 in this series. That being said, like I'm not really struggling to catch up too much. Like, I'm surprised at how I do actually remember quite a bit about this series. But for the first 100 or so pages of this, we don't have any of the female main character for like reasons, and it does pick up exactly where book 3 left off. So the first 100 or so pages were a little bit slow. They weren't as appealing because this is a 700 page book, but it's not like a dense or difficult 700 page book. The text is pretty big. It's a fantasy romance, a series that was previously, up until this book was released, was self-published, and so it definitely reads like that. And that is not to say that it reads like that in any kind of bad way, but it's not like a dense fantasy read. It has the like compelling writing and pace of like your typical self-published fantasy romance. I can't quite remember, because like I said, it has been a couple of years, but I can't quite remember what perspectives we had in the first 3 books in this series, but I definitely think that this has a few more, because we don't only have the female and the main characters, we also have a couple of other female characters that up until this point in the series, I wouldn't even call them prominent side characters. I'd say that they're recurring side characters, but up until now, where they now have their own perspectives, I wouldn't have assumed that they would ever play a significant part in this plot. So I'm interested to see kind of what relevance they have. At the minute, they're not my focus. Like, when we do switch to them, I kind of just want to get back to the main perspectives, but I'm hoping and assuming that they are going to play a little bit of a more critical role down the line. So I feel like we're going to have some smoother sailing now that I've broke past the page 200 mark, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. You know, 214 pages into a book is not a small amount, but I still have exactly 500 pages to go, so it's still going to be a while. And you know what, this is not even the first or like the second time that Bookopoly has done me dirty in this regard by giving me a brick as my first book of the video. If you want to hit me with something this big as like my final book, fine, okay, you know, like it's the last thing, but the first book, why does it always do this to me? I mean, at least after this one, providing we don't get another 700 page book, and I know I have at least one more in the stacks, but providing I don't get another, everything's gonna feel like much faster than this. But like I said, it's not very dense, so providing I knuckle down and actually get some reading done, I should be hopefully nearly done at some point in the near future. I mean, I've cleaned my whole house, and I also, yesterday actually, if you have been keeping up with not only Shelve It, not only Shelve It or Scrap It, but also my general vlogs, I was doing a running program to get you from like doing nothing up to running 30 minutes like without stopping, and I finished the program yesterday. Not only did I run for 30 minutes without stopping, I also hit my first ever 5k, so that is a massive achievement. But I did do that run the day after leg day, so I was already in a little bit of pain, and I tried a new route because obviously I knew I needed about 5k, and I like to run in a circular route, not do it out and back. So I picked a new route that took me through the woods, which I knew it was going to, but the path isn't too bad in the woods. But then it took me out through a farmer's field onto a country road with no path. So it was an ordeal. I nearly broke my ankle in that field more than once, but we made it, and I'm feeling super accomplished. So today, I literally don't have any plans. I think Curtis wants to play some Baldur's Gate, but then this evening I know that he's going to be hanging out. He's playing cards, I think, with one of his friends. So my plan, I guess, is to get through quite a bit of this, and also maybe watch some TV, maybe watch some YouTube, maybe play either Metropolis Mania or Fortnite. I don't know. I don't have any plans, and actually I do find this very overwhelming because I feel like when I have unlimited options, actually settling down on something is a struggle, but we'll figure something out.
Friends are getting married, they're all settling down, so I lay here, watch the ceiling fan go round and round, and it's always gone too fast, like a trip to the beach or the life of James Dean, and it kills me to think I'm avoiding the pill I can't swallow. Haven't seen my twin brother, I keep missing his calls. It's
I am here again with another 200-page check-in. I'm 406 pages into this one now, so I have officially passed the halfway mark, and I have 308 pages to go, so I still have a decent amount, but I am feeling very accomplished today because not only have I already read over 100 pages, I've also edited and scheduled 2 videos, so I truly am on top form today. But this book is hard to talk about because not only is it the 4th book in a series, so I can't really get into it because of spoilers leading up to this point. Like, I don't even want to tell you guys what the name of the male main character is because I know that there is questions about his identity very early on in the series, and I don't know at what point, like, what would be a spoiler to tell you. But not only is it book 4 in a series, it's also fucking enormous. It's huge, and so I've decided we're gonna do 200-page check-ins so I can give you a little bit of an update as to where I'm at as I make my way through this. I have to say, 406 pages in, those first 100 or so pages that I said I wasn't sure about, that took me a little while to get into, there was quite a bit happening there. I mean, it was more dealing with the aftermath of the events at the end of book 3, but there were certain things happening. Since then, nothing has happened in this book, and I'm not even necessarily mad about it because what we're doing is we're exploring some of the male main characters' like backstory, and our female main character, Auron, is really learning a lot more about him than she has been able to up until this point, because we have like almost a reprieve at the moment where we've had a little bit more danger throughout the first 3 books, and the amount of time that these two have been able to spend together has been a little bit more limited, aside from in book 2, I think. But in book 2 they were very much getting to know each other. Something that I truly admire about this book is how it goes from talking about and dealing with like really dark, traumatic, like deep personal shit straight into smut, just like straight in into spicy scenes. There hasn't been too many so far in this book. It's not the kind of series where it's just like literally wall-to-wall sex scenes, but like it is a smutty fantasy romance, and I actually do really like the relationship in this one. So I would say, do I even want anything to happen? You know, if it was another 300 pages of these two just hanging around in this location, I think I would be okay with it. But based on some kind of intel we've had in the last 50 pages or so, I do feel like we're going to be getting back to reality and getting back to the action soon. So I mean, I haven't struggled to get through this at all after that first 100 pages. I've been soaring my way through it, but I do also feel like the general piecing within like the plot is going to pick up soon. I just had a shower, finally washed my hair, it was long overdue, and I'm about to go sit down and read. But I just wanted to show you guys how dedicated and passionate I am about the things that I love, because I placed an Asda order yesterday, like a home delivery order, the first home delivery order I've ever placed from a supermarket for one singular thing, or 72 singular things maybe, because I have 72 cans of fizzy beverages. Now, the reason why I placed the order was for the vanilla Coke, because let me tell you, you cannot get this anywhere. Morrison's have stopped selling the cans and they've started selling 2-litre bottles, which is fine, but like, Morrison's is 25 minutes away. And then on Amazon, you could also get the cans. Suddenly they didn't have them anymore, and I know Asda always comes through for me. And these were like 3 crates for £24, so I got 48 cans of vanilla Coke, which I'm wondering if the reason why they've been going out of stock is because they've rebranded. Because let me show you. So this is the ones I've ordered today. These are the ones that I bought from Asda like 2 weeks ago. So I'm wondering if that is the issue, that they're like swapping out of the old packaging and it'll become available again. I personally prefer this to this. I also don't like the new Dr. Pepper stuff, and I also, the reason I got a crate of Dr. Pepper is because sometimes if I can't find vanilla Coke, I'll go for Dr. Pepper, but Dr. Pepper Zero, so hard to find. So I got a crate of this as well, and you know what? I drink, or like, I'm a beverage goblin, I am. I always have a 500ml bottle of water on the go, and then twice a day I'll crack open a nice ice cold fizzy beverage, and then sometimes I'll make myself a hot drink to go with it. But these are gonna last me forever. I only drink like a maximum of 2 cans a day, sometimes only 1. So I'm like, what's that thing, like I'm prepping for the apocalypse. There's like a name for it. I'm doing that, but only vanilla Coke. I did not think that we were going to be in this update today, but I am at my next 200 page check-in for Glow. I have 111 pages left of this book. The end is in sight. And you know what? Still at this point, not very much has happened. Since the last time I checked in with you, a little bit of tension has started to ramp up. Like, we've had some politicking and we're very much gearing up for what is going to be a massive fucking cliffhanger, as is always the case with indie fantasy romance. And I'm in exactly the same position as I was for this book with book 5, because the paperback for this actually comes out in 2 days. I think I literally looked at it today. The paperback comes out in 2 days, but I have the first 3 books in indie paperbacks that I got signed and personalized at Rare, I think 2 years ago. And I also have the Fairy Loot edition hardbacks of the first 3 books. So at this point, I've decided that because I can't have matching indie paperbacks, I'm just gonna have a full set of Fairy Loot ones and then keep my 3 indie paperbacks that are personalized. So I don't want to do this again. I don't want to buy a hardback of Gold just to unhaul it, because like, even half price, this was £10. Yeah, this was £10 even half price, and that is like the standard price of a paperback now. So then I looked on my library and they have literally books 1 to 4 and they don't have book 5. Like, why would you do this to me? So for the first time ever, I've put in a purchase request at my library for them to order in the paperback, which is released in like 2 days. So we'll see if that happens. I always like feel bad about purchase requests. Like, obviously it's good to utilize your library, I do, but I just feel so bad about asking them to buy things for me. I don't know why. It feels like charity. Like, it feels like I'm asking them to give me something for free, which I mean, I kind of am, but also not really. That's what the library's there for. And I've always just felt so bad about it. But I mean, the demand is clearly there because they have copies of every other book in this series. So I'm doing them a favor really by giving them a nudge to order book 5. But I'm actually really worried about where this is going to end, because I feel like we've overcome a lot of trauma in this book. We've had a lot of character development. We've had a lot of personal growth. And we've also had a lot of not advancement, but like solidifying of the romantic relationship. So I feel like something terrible is going to happen regarding the romantic relationship, especially given the way that the characters are very much trying to avoid the situation that they're currently in. I feel like we're going to get to this situation assuming everything's going to be okay, and it's actually all going to go tits up. So that's my prediction. Not going to tell you if I'm right or if I'm wrong, because spoilers. But hopefully, what time is it? It is 9:50, so I am going to read a chapter and then get in bed and read some more chapters. So I think I'm going to end up going to sleep tonight with a really inconvenient like 40 pages of this book left. But tomorrow morning I'm gonna go for a run. I'm gonna do some yoga. I'm gonna get a shower and get ready for the day, which should take me till about 9. So I should have about an hour before my dentist appointment. So hopefully the ideal situation would be that I finish this book before I go to my dentist appointment, because I'm just going to be really annoyed if I have to break off and go to an appointment that I don't want to go to anyway, because I hate the dentist, with like 10 pages of my book left. I called it, guys. It is 9:52, so I'm going to leave in just over 10 minutes, but I'm on page 673. So I'm going out with 40 pages left and we're right in the thick of the action. Still don't have a good feeling about how this is going to end though, can't lie. So I managed to conquer the beast and I finished Glow by Raven Kennedy. I thoroughly enjoyed this as well. I gave it a very, very solid 4 stars, and I am so desperate to pick up book 5. I've been scrolling through Vinted, seeing if I can pick up book 5 reasonably, and I could, but not at a price that I want to pay for a book that I know that I'm not going to keep. So we'll just hope that my library request comes through, or that I maybe stumble across it secondhand at some point in the future. But I mean, my library hold should come in before that. I'm also hoping, actually, because book 6 is released later this year, so I'm hoping that we have at least an announcement for the second half of the set from Fairy Loot, like leading up to that, that would be kind of an ideal resolution as well. But it is just that typical indie fantasy romance format of having like a very slow and steady pace throughout the majority of the book, where like not necessarily nothing is happening, but this was more character development than it was characters actually really doing anything. And then when you get to the end, it's just like balls to the wall action and makes you desperate to pick up the next book. And I don't have the next book in my hands. It is a good time to be reading this though, because the paperback is released tomorrow. And like I said, I think it's only a couple of months until the final book in the series. So if I wanted to finish the series by the end of the year, then I could, and I wouldn't have to deal with any more of those pesky cliffhangers. In terms of Shelve It or Scrap It, this is a scrap that should be a shelve. If I wasn't unhauling this intentionally, then it would definitely be a shelve, because I had a great time with it. And I'm so glad that I picked this up, because I think the fact that it was traditionally published and I didn't want mismatching editions kind of put me off it a little bit, but I actually do really like this story and really like these characters. So I'm glad that I got back into this series. And the main character in this series, I love that man. I do. And oh god, the end of this book. I need book 5. I need it. Pretty sure if I wasn't filming Shelve It or Scrap It, so I had to move on to something else right now, like that's in the stacks, I would be tempted to just buy myself a copy of book 5 and binge through it right now. I had such a good time with this one. While we're on this topic actually of like wanting to buy things but not wanting the books, I've had a couple of questions recently, or kind of like some interest being shown in my ebook collection, seeing as I'm not trying to buy physical books. Maybe I should switch to Kindle and buy ebooks. I don't like owning digital media. I really don't, because if you put it in terms of a Kindle book, like I did look, I think book 5 is $5.99. That's $5.99 that I'm going to spend on a book that I'm never going to get back, because I spent £10 on this and I can resell it for at least $5. So I'm getting at least half of my money back on it. But you don't really have that with ebooks. And if I'm buying ebooks, then I'm just buying books to read that aren't the books that I own, which further not continues the problem, but it doesn't help with the problem of the fact that I still have so many actual books that I need to read. So I just thought I'd mention that here, because I have had a couple of questions about it. I've had a Kindle for 13 years, I think. And I shit you not, I have less than 30 ebooks. I have a KU subscription and a Scribd subscription. But in terms of actually buying ebooks, I really just don't have that many at all. With that out of the way, and this book heading to my unhaul pile, let's see what Bookopoly has in store for us for roll number 2. I am terrified, but also really excited because I love playing Bookopoly. Roll number 1 landed us over here. Let's see what roll number 2 has in store. Oh shit, that is a double. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that is an anticipated release. All of the train stations correspond to videos that I've made on my channel. This one isn't applicable anymore, so I covered it over with a different one. So we have anticipated release. I am going to roll again, and I'm gonna see if we can get something we can double up on to combine with anticipated release. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is fantasy romance. So we are looking for an anticipated fantasy romance in the stacks. Okay, so looking at our stacks, this is a hard one for me, because anticipated releases for me tend to be books that are either sequels or by authors that I've read from previously. So there is one singular book in these stacks that was on one of my anticipated releases for 2024 list, and that one is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. However, this is not a fantasy romance as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure it's a YA fantasy. There is one other book, and that is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I don't think that anything else would apply. This one I'm going to look up on Goodreads. I think that that is more of like a group heist story than it is a fantasy romance, which is actually a shame, because I would consider the other Hafsa Faisal series, We Hunt the Flame, I would consider that to be a fantasy romance, which I would also really like to complete that duology before I started this one. And you know what, actually, my logic for including A Tempest of Tea in my anticipated releases video was not sound, which we'll talk about in just a second when we talk about A Fate Inked in Blood. So the tags for this one, why can't I see tags on my phone? Here we go. No, like romance is way down in the tags on Goodreads. So A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen is on my spreadsheet as an anticipated release, but I did not include it in my anticipated releases video, and this is where my logic for including this but not this is not sound. I included this one because I've read a book from Hafsa Faisal before. I really liked it. I haven't finished the series, but I would pick up more from Hafsa Faisal in the future. This one I didn't include in my anticipated releases video, and this one is by an author who I've read from before. I've read 2 books in the, why can't I remember what it's called? The Bridge Kingdom series. So I've read the first duology in that like longer series. Really enjoyed them both, but I haven't finished the series, so I didn't include this because while I did want to read this, I have other Danielle L. Jensen books that I want to read before I read this. Just like I have other Hafsa Faisal books that I want to read before I read this one. So I think that this would count. I did put it in my spreadsheet, and when I was filming the video, I decided not to include it. And I'm pretty sure this one came in the adult fairy loot box for the month of February this year, but I am pretty sure that this would count as a fantasy romance. That is what I associate Danielle L. Jensen with anyway, like that's the genre that I associate her with. Yeah, the first 3 tags are fantasy, romance, and fantasy romance. So by the grounds of this one not counting because it's not a fantasy romance, and I would rather double up than add an extra book after we started on such a long book for this episode, I'm gonna go with A Fate Inked in Blood. And I actually, because I read a book for the first prompt that I knew that I was going to enjoy, that I really wanted to read, I actually for the second prompt wanted to pick a book that I was more unsure about and like take a chance that I potentially wouldn't enjoy it. But I do feel like I'm gonna have a really good time with this because I have read and enjoyed Danielle L. Jensen before. This one, I actually don't know anything about it apart from that it is inspired by Norse mythology. Yeah, it also says in the synopsis that it's a fantasy romance. It is following a woman who is in an unwanted marriage and her husband betrays her to the Jarl, which puts her in a fight to death against his son. In this fight to the death, she reveals that she has magic, and the magic that she has is foretold to unite the country under a king. And the king, believing that he is going to be the rightful ruler of the realm, enlists his son to protect her from their enemies while she trains to become a warrior and also to use her magic and falls for the son at the same time. I've heard really good things about this. I'm really excited to get into it, I can't lie. And is this like a 400-page book? 410, so not the shortest, but definitely a more achievable length than Glow was. Like I said, this one is the adult fairy loot edition, so it has a completely unique like custom cover, custom end pages, and foiling under the dust jacket as well. So I'm actually going to take the jacket off and put one of my like protective ones on. And I'm doing sprints on Patreon tonight, so hopefully I'll be able to get through a significant chunk of this because time is of the essence. So I am now 148 pages into A Fate Inked in Blood. I am approaching the halfway point and I am enjoying this, but I don't think I'm enjoying it as much as I anticipated enjoying a like quite well-regarded fantasy romance release of this year. In this one, we are following Freya, and the first pretty much half of the synopsis is covered in like the first 2 chapters of this book. It happens like really quick because Freya is in this unwanted marriage that she's been forced into. She hates her husband, and in chapter 2, her husband goes to the Jarl and tells the Jarl something that causes him to initiate this fight to the death. And everyone's kind of shocked by this because it seems a really extreme reaction to a man saying that he wants out of his marriage to like essentially have her killed, because the person that he challenges to fight her is his son, and his son has been blessed by the gods. He's blessed by Tyr, which means that he can summon this flaming axe, and he has like unmatched skills in battle. Freya is obviously really up against the wall in this fight, so she calls upon the goddess that has blessed her to save her life. And she has always known that she's had this power, but her father told her never to reveal it to anybody, and that is because he knew that if she did, she would be taken to fulfill this prophecy that says that the Shield Maiden is going to cause everyone to unite under one king. Nobody's really sure, and she's not really sure of the role that she specifically plays in this, but essentially this fight to the death has been orchestrated to force her to reveal her power, and when that happens, she's taken to marry the Jarl so that this prophecy can like get underway. Now all of the other Jarls and like people around find out about this, and they start to come and raid the place where Freya now is, because they don't want to be united under one king, and if they were united under one king, they don't want it to be this Jarl that they're united under. So Jarl Snorri then assigns his son Bjorn to look after Freya, to protect her because of his like unparalleled warrior skills, so that this prophecy will be fulfilled, because obviously if she dies then it's not going to come into fruition. So I I just don't love Norse mythology in books. I do like it in other formats, in other media. Like I really like Norse and Celtic mythology in things like video games, like Skyrim, Elder Scrolls especially, draws on a lot of Norse mythology. But when it comes to books, it's just not my preferred setting, and I don't know why. I do think that Danielle L. Jensen has done a very good job of establishing this setting. I always say that like a book is very good if I can picture it very well in my mind, because I am able to do that, and this one is like playing out like a movie in my head. Like the atmosphere, the world building is on point. I'm just not invested. Like I'm not super invested in it. Having read The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen, which is, I think it has been published traditionally in the UK now. It was indie when I read it, and I have the indie paperbacks. There is a very clear difference to me in the way that this book feels in comparison to The Bridge Kingdom, because this one is traditionally published, and I feel like you can tell, like I feel like this feels like a traditionally published novel, whereas The Bridge Kingdom definitely feels much more indie. The Bridge Kingdom, pacing wise, is a lot more similar to like Glow, which I just read, where it is a very, very slow build. That one's also super political though, more than it is action based. And in this one, we've had two kind of like, outside of the trial, like the fight for her death that she has to do, we've had two other like big fight scenes since then. So pacing wise and structurally, it feels more like a standard kind of modern fantasy story as opposed to like an indie fantasy romance. The love interest Bjorn I am really enjoying, and it is a slow burn, which I do typically like. I don't feel like the romance is coming in as strongly as I would like it to at this point, and I feel like if I was potentially more invested in the romance, then I would be liking it a little bit more. I do think it is not wholly plot driven, it's quite balanced, but I don't feel as connected to Freya as I would like to as a main character, especially as the focus is not super on the romance right now. It's not super on her either. Like I'm not as attached or connected to her as I feel like I would like to be 150 pages in, but I do still have over half of the book to go, so there's definitely plenty of time for it to grow on me. And it could be the case of like the first half is kind of like really establishing the story and building it up for the second half to be amazing. So today is actually a pretty great day, because over the beginning of the week, like I wrote myself a to-do list, and the way I write my to-do list is that I do them at the beginning of the week and I kind of spread everything I need to do across days, and then obviously things get added in along the way. But I did that. I made my to-do list, I assigned it across the week, and I completed it pretty much by Tuesday evening. So today I have a couple of bits that I need to do. I have to proof a video, I have to sort out the description box of another one, and after that I don't really have anything video related to get on with. I am going to work on my Patreon bookmark for June, but aside from that I think I'm just going to get some reading in, because I mean I'm in the mood to, for one, and also it's a great excuse to make progress in this book and this video.
Missing his calls. It's funny just how easily a family can drift apart. I'm finally getting married to an angel in human form, but I still think about Nashville. We're staying here the right call.
So, whoa. And there goes my lip balm. Please don't eat that later before I pick it up. No, stay here. Last night, she's going for it. This is why we can't have nice things. Last night, I broke the page 300 mark in this book. I'm 318 pages in now. So I think I've got exactly 90 pages left. 91. And I'm not vibing with this book, guys. I don't hate it. Like I was gonna say throughout the course of this book I haven't really thought about DNFing. That would technically not be true, because I have considered DNFing this one. It's not that I don't like it, it's that I'm just not invested. And I think that the issue is that I feel like the way that we're getting other characters isn't in a way that makes me feel connected to them. I feel like this whole thing is happening in the main character's head, like especially when she's talking about the love interest. I feel like she's really digging in and like telling us how she feels, and she's really like stuck in her head about the situation that they're in, because obviously with this guy being the son of the Jarl that she's married to, nothing can happen between them, and the Jarl's hold over her is that he's essentially threatening to hurt her family if at any point she doesn't do what he wants. So she's really in her head about how they can never be together and it would be bad, and how she wants him but she can't have him. And we have a lot more of this inner monologue and her spiraling about it than we do actual interactions with them. So honestly, this guy is presented at the beginning as a little bit of a ladies' man. Like, everyone swoons when he walks past, and knowing that, well, I know that this is going to be a romance between them, okay? So I'm going in with that knowledge. But if I was in this girl's position, knowing that he's a bit of a ladies' man, I would say that nothing, at least for the first half of this book, nothing that he necessarily does is anything that would lead me to believe he has any specific interest in me. I would kind of just assume that he's a nice guy and also a little bit of a flirt, if I'm being honest. I feel like I'm not really feeling the connection between them. And actually, since we passed the page 300 mark, I'm feeling it slightly more, but I'm just not absorbed. So I don't know at this point what the verdict on this book is going to be, because I was feeling like kind of very bored and underwhelmed up until I got in bed and picked it up again last night, and I read a couple of chapters and I was like, you know what, like, I am actually enjoying this one. So we'll see how I feel with the last 100 pages. So my first port of call for the day is to get this finished, and I hope that I end up liking it a little bit more throughout the end, because I'm not like disliking it, but I think the worst thing is not when I DNF a book that's like I'm super ambivalent about, or I don't like a book that I'm super ambivalent about. It's when I assumed that I would love a book and it kind of doesn't end up turning out that way. I am here to speak my truth, because I have now finished A Fate Inked in Blood, and I don't think that the last 100 pages made it any better. I actually kind of think that the last 100 pages made it a little bit worse, and take that with a pinch of salt, because I actually don't think that this book is bad at all. I think that it's genuinely like pretty decent. I think that it has a very good pace throughout here. It is a little bit faster than is my typical preference, but we have like regular action scenes, like regular checkpoints that like kind of build momentum throughout this story. So if you are a little bit more of a plot driven reader than I tend to be, I feel like that you will enjoy that this is a little bit faster paced, but it is fast paced without, in my opinion, necessarily sacrificing something else, like sacrificing the character development. I do have to say that I do think it is the character development that kind of lost me a little bit with this one, because I feel like the characters lacked a depth that I would appreciate, but I feel like that balance between plot and characters was pretty much straight down the middle, and it made this like a pretty quick read in terms of the events of the plot. In terms of those characters, I just feel like I was constantly being told by the main character how she felt, how it was, how she wanted this guy so badly but they couldn't be together, and I don't feel like I was feeling it. I wasn't feeling that longing and that pining. I just felt like I was constantly being told about it. I'm not sure if this book would have actually benefited from being a dual POV, and I think that the reason that it isn't a dual POV is because of something that happens in the plot, something that I thought was very, very obvious from very early on, and I think that that is why the last 100 pages didn't hit for me and didn't make it any better, because throughout this the main character is constantly telling us how terribly people have treated her, and we do see that. She's passed from husband to husband without anybody ever considering what she wants, and like she kind of gets something that she wants for herself but still gets passed off to another husband for the benefit of the people around her but never for her own benefit. And so she's tired of being used, she's tired of people taking things from her, and I just feel like that constantly being in that position would cause you to be a little bit more wary and a little bit more distrustful of people than she is. So I really just don't feel like the events of this plot should have taken her by surprise to the extent that she did. She is a very forgiving person. She's always willing to give people another chance, and she's always, to an extent, willing to kind of sacrifice herself and her happiness for the benefit of others, even though nobody is really doing that for her. And I felt like some elements of the plot that kind of made her nature flip a little bit, although it is kind of explained, didn't really feel all that natural to me. And then on behalf of the male main character, when kind of this plot was unraveling, I feel like he handled it very immaturely, and it kind of lowered my opinion of him a little bit. And I do feel like he has been like, you know when people are saying, I love you, I'm committed to you, like I want this, like you want this, because we were just being told and like I wasn't really feeling it. I just wasn't really feeling it, you know? So I feel like that is kind of where it lost me. I did find it a little bit boring throughout the middle, I will admit. When I was reading the last 50 pages and when I was reading like the middle 150 pages, I kind of just wanted this book to be over because I wasn't hating it. It was okay, but I wasn't loving it to a point where I was like desperate to see what happened next. So I thought that this was going to be a struggle. I even thought when I was halfway through this book that I was going to be conflicted about what we were going to do about it. I gave it a 3-star rating, which means that I liked it, but to me, it wasn't anything special. I do definitely see why other people really love this book though. Like I said, I do genuinely think it was decent. I just didn't really like it all that much, which means that when it comes down to the question of are we shelving or are we scrapping this, I'm really sad to say that I'm scrapping it. One, because I thought I was going to love this, and two, just look at this. Just look at this. I'm sad because I do really like the art in this edition, but it wasn't for me. So we're not keeping it, which means that it is time to get to our third roll of this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It. So technically I lied to you because we rolled a double when we selected the last book. So this is actually roll number 4 of currently a total of 6. So let's see what it's gonna be. That is a 6. And that is a community shelf card. So these are a stack of extra prompts. I have no idea what's in here. I don't know if they're gonna work for Shelve It or Scrap It, but let's find out. This is a Ryan recommendation. Okay. Okie dokie. So Ryan is my best friend. He actually texted me like maybe half an hour ago. So I feel like I could get a pretty quick turnaround on this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send him a picture of all of the books in the stacks. And I'm just gonna ask him to pick one. I am really concerned about this because he reads, but he doesn't read to the extent that I do. He's not like in the book community as much as I am. So I feel like he's gonna go for something pretty hyped. I'm really concerned that it could be like Babel by R.F. Kong, which I don't really want to read. A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. And he would do that to me as well. Like he would know that I wouldn't want to read that and he would pick that one. So he could also go Emily Henry. I have no idea. It could literally be anything and I'm slightly terrified, but I will send him those pictures and then I'm going to crack on with editing some of this vlog and I'll let you know what he picks when he replies. Okay, so he's here. He's reading my messages. He has told me that he will recommend me a book, but not before being a sassy bastard, which is pretty standard, and I should have expected this, if I'm being honest. Oh, fuck, see, I told you guys that this was gonna happen. I called this. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. So I hate it here. I do. And I also hate how much I knew what he was gonna pick. I know that boy far too well. Because now I have to try and read Babel by R.F. Kuang and everything in my body is telling me that I do not want to read this book. This is in the stacks for a reason, and it is because if I wasn't a rep for Fairy Loot and Illumicrate, I would never ever have a copy of this book. I would never have bought it. I've been a rep for both of them, like Fairy Loot and Illumicrate, for a long time now, and whatever month this was, at some point last year I think, both of them chose Babel as the book of the month. So I not only have one copy of this, I have 2 copies of it. And I've put it in the stacks because I know that I will never, ever pick this up off my own volition. Like I will never read this book unless I am forced to because I don't want to read it. But all the girlies give it 5 stars and I just can't unhaul a book that everyone gives 5 stars without at least trying it, even though everything in my body is screaming that I'm gonna hate it. So we're gonna try. We're gonna try to read this book. I don't really know too much about it, like the actual specifics of the plot. I think it is about language and it's set in Oxford. There are 3 things potentially that make me not interested in this. And I know some of y'all love this book and this is gonna hurt you, but it's just truly not for me, which is why I just feel like I'm gonna hate it. So it's set in Oxford, it's the same feeling that I had about A Discovery of Witches. I thought I was gonna hate A Discovery of Witches because I hate things that are pretentious in a way where like they're talking down to you or patronizing you or really trying to make a point. Like it just really irritates me and I don't like it. Discovery of Witches turned out to not be like that at all. I don't feel like I'm gonna say the same for this based on what people have said about it. It's also set in 1836, so it's Victorian fantasy. I have come to really love historical fantasy over the last few years, but specifically historical fantasy that's set more in like the, I want to say like the 13th to the 17th century is like my sweet spot. I don't like Victorian settings. I think that they're really, really boring. And I feel the same about war settings, like specifically World War II. And I think it's just because in the UK especially, I feel like we have so much media set in these time periods that they just really don't interest me. And I really like to read about time periods that I don't know much about. So I'm more like learning about things that I didn't really know about up until reading that book. And Victorian England is just not that for me. It's not. The third reason why I think I'm not going to like this book is that I don't have a lot of interest in R.R. Kuang's books. The only book that she has written where the synopsis interested me and I thought genuinely it would be something that I would like is The Poppy War, and I didn't like The Poppy War. So I feel like my chances of liking anything else when I didn't like The Poppy War and the synopses don't interest me, I feel like the chances are really slim. So I'm scared of reading this book because I don't want to hate your fave, but I just truly don't think I'm going to like it. And I also feel like I need to find a line between trying this book and not wanting to waste time on it and DNFing it. And not that I don't want to go into this with a negative attitude. Like I don't want to go into this assuming that I'm gonna hate it, but I also don't want to waste my time trying to like it if I don't, you know? So I feel like I'm gonna have to try really hard to find the line between trying it because I want to try it. Like that's all I want to do. That's the only reason I've kept it, is because I want to give it a chance. But at the same time, if it's not working out, I don't want to waste my time. I want to cut my losses and I want to DNF, but I want to do that without going into it with the attitude of like I'm gonna hate it and DNFing it because I think I'm gonna hate it, as opposed to giving it a chance. And I do really feel like there is a difficult balance there where I could be reading this and be in a bad mood because I don't want to read it and then want to DNF it when maybe I would actually like it if I wasn't in such a mood about it. And I just don't know how to find that line. But we're gonna try reading Babel. I hope I enjoy it. I mean, it's not a small book. It's 542 pages, so it's not a small book at all. I do have 2 copies of this and I feel like we're going to have a positive resolution in terms of the challenge anyway with this, because even if I liked it, I just really don't foresee me liking this enough to want to keep 2 copies, so we'll have no issue with shelving it if we had to. And then if I ended up scrapping it, then we end up with not only being able to scrap this book but also fill in the gap that the other copy is taking up. This is it. This is what we're reading. I kind of hate it. But I'm gonna try my best to give it a fair chance, but just don't be surprised if this doesn't work out. I would rather this didn't work out and I cut my losses than ending up hating it. But I also like would really love to love it, you know? I just need to stop worrying about what's gonna happen and just start it and see what's gonna happen. So this is kind of what I mean about pretentious things that kind of try and hit you over the head with a point. So basically I'm on page 26 and I already know, like I already have gotten the point, Brie wants to say hi, that this book is about racism, it's about colonialism, and Professor Lovell doesn't want Robin to speak Cantonese because he is a white male scholar in the 1800s and he doesn't feel like Cantonese is valuable and it's like an irrelevant language because no important white people speak it. I already get that from all of this 26 pages that I've read so far. I don't need you to tell me again in the footnotes with specific references to how this is something that actually happened and the reason why it happened, and these are the references. Like it's too much. Like I should be getting the point in the text. I am getting the point in the text. This is not an essay. I don't need to see your references. I just want to celebrate my own achievement right now because, excuse the darkness, I like to work out in the dark, but I'm joining Cody Rigsby's 30-minute 2000s ride for my 550th cycling class, and I'm hyped. I'm hoping for a shout out. I'm not optimistic. I don't even know if like 550 is a real milestone because the actual achievements you get after 500 only go up in hundreds, but I'm doing my best. I'm working for it. I got one last time for 500 in April, maybe, with Ali Love, but we all know that Cody Rigsby's my dream, so I was gonna say keep your fingers crossed for me, but obviously by the time you see this, it's done, so I'll report back later. Get me off, sweating till my clothes come off.
All right, friends, let's check in with that form now that we've gotten a little bit of movement in our body.
And it's always gone too fast, like a trip to the beach or the life of James Dean. And it kills me to think
You'll may be very surprised to hear that I am 172 pages into Babel. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, which I actually didn't really expect. There are elements that I'm finding super tedious. Namely, I mean, this book is to do with language, so do I have a right to complain about the paragraphs about etymology? I feel like I don't. I feel like that is not necessarily justified, but it is losing me a little bit where it is talking, going in depth about the roots of words and the languages they've evolved from, because this book as well, it does have a magic system, and the magic system is the silver working, which is essentially engraving silver bars with 2 words in 2 different languages, and the magic works based on the things that are lost in translation when you are translating between languages, and the magic kind of fills that gap, and that's what it creates. So you can use it to make things stay hotter for longer, for things to run faster, like carriages to run faster and safer. You can use it to turn invisible and to cure illnesses or poisons. Essentially the core of this book, the point of this book, is that the English are hoarding all of this wealth and all of this knowledge for themselves. They put a price on silver working that is imagined, because it's only the cost of the silver that is the physical cost. Everything else, all the value in the silver, is just inflated based on people kind of decide what it's worth. And most of the silver in the world is in England. England runs on silver for trivial reasons, while people in other countries that could really benefit from this magic are dying because they don't have the money to have access to it, or the British are unwilling to sell it unless people pay extortionate prices for it. So we're following this guy called Robin, who when he was a kid was taken from the Canton region of China by this Englishman, and he is brought to England. The reason why this English guy wants him, I mean, there's more than one reason why he wants him specifically, but it is because he speaks Cantonese and Mandarin, and to be able to work the silver efficiently, you need to really truly know a language fluently. And so children that are born in other countries and then brought to England and educated in more languages have more of an advantage at being really good silver workers. So he's brought to England, and he's raised by this typical rich Englishman in the early Victorian period. So he's a bigot, a racist, a sexist. He believes in corporal punishment. Robin kind of questions things, but also he is raised to be grateful for everything that he has. So as Robin is being trained to be a silver worker, he eventually has to go to Oxford, where he will obviously get a degree in it and learn all of this stuff regarding translation and how to eventually silver work. And when he arrives there, he meets this group of 3 people who become his cohorts, including an Indian boy, a black girl, and a white girl. Now all of these people shouldn't be at Oxford for various reasons. I think it's Victoire, and I don't know if it's Rami. I think his name would be Rami. Our dark-skinned Victoire is also a girl, and then Letty is female. And so it is kind of about the difficulties they face where they have been allowed to be at Oxford to fulfill a purpose, but they're very much othered constantly and not wanted there. And the degree to which they're othered depends on how dark their skin is. Rami is a lot more othered and excluded and discriminated against than Robin is, because Robin is white passage. So it's about racism in institutions such as Oxford and education in general, especially in times like the early Victorian period, but then also colonialism and the kind of loss of something, whether that be culture or intricate meaning, that happens when works are translated, because translation is not often a word for word kind of thing. You have to look at the context of the paragraph or the sentence to be able to translate it somewhat accurately. And then also when some of these translations were happening historically, they were also essentially whitewashed to better serve a Western audience. So I am enjoying it in terms of it being like a story, like a work of fiction. I am not loving the Oxford setting. Even if this book wasn't trying to make a point, I wouldn't be loving it, because it does have all of those elements of prestige and elitism and pretension that just generally irritate me in any setting, and just like the kind of notion of how elite you have to be to go to an institution like Oxford, and also the way that they have like these different classifications of like whether you're a commoner or a scholar based on how you got into the university. So all of that is kind of like annoying me, but then this book is also supposed to annoy you and supposed to make you feel uncomfortable in the way that it like kind of directly challenges the discrimination and racism that these characters face. And then you also have the intricacies of like all of the etymology and the language and how that is also talking about society as a whole and colonialism. So I'm enjoying the story, but I fucking hate the footnotes. I hate them. So this has actually been a multimedia experience, because I discovered that this book is on Everand, and not only is it available in audiobook, it is also available in ebook. So last night, I'm not gonna lie, I just wanted to lie down and I couldn't be bothered holding this because it's kind of big and the spine's kind of stiff. So I switched to the ebook version, and I much prefer this because in the ebook, the footnotes are still there, but if you want to see them, you have to click on a link that will take you kind of to the references, which is all of the footnotes. So I'm just not doing that, and I'm just reading it without the footnotes, and it is so much better, because the frustrating thing about this, while I like it in terms of, like I said, it being a fictional story, I feel like a lot of the footnotes is just R.F. Kuang kind of explaining the point, and the point, you're supposed to get the point, and a lot of this book is about being really clever with language, and I feel like the kind of cleverness of this book is spoiled by the fact that in some of the footnotes you have R.F. Kuang explaining points that are inferred in the text, which it's not that it makes you feel stupid. I feel like it implies that the reader is stupid and that they need an extra clarification, but I just feel like if you're not reading comprehensively enough to pick up the point that the text is inferring, then you're just not going to get, like, you just are not going to get the point, and you're supposed to get the point by yourself. I don't enjoy being told what the point is when I know what the point is, because I've read the book, if that makes sense. But unfortunately, the footnotes are in the audiobook. A lot of them are just translations or references, and they're quite easy to ignore. But yeah, my preferred way of reading it so far is via the ebook. I have been listening to the audiobook today because I've been having a tidy round. My bestie, who was putting me through this, is actually on his way here, because we are going to be making friendship bracelets ahead of Taylor Swift, which we're going to the first London show next Friday. So I've had a bit of a whip round, and now I'm actually just going to go for a quick run because I need to wash my hair anyway. So I was like, might as well go get a bit sweaty beforehand, because then I can just wash my hair straight away. So I'm going to go and get on with that, make some Taylor Swift bracelets, and I'm aiming to get, I want to say 300 pages into this at least. I'm on page 172, so I've read like 70-ish pages today so far. So if I could get through another 120 through a combination of like ebook and audio, I feel like that would be a pretty decent amount achieved today. Hey guys, it is Father's Day and I've just got back from my dad's. I've had some pineapple, a little pineapple snack, and I've got myself a fizzy beverage. It's now 3:30 and I'm gonna get some reading done. I'm doing really well actually. I'm 358 pages into Babel so far, and I am still really enjoying it. I read a book, can't remember what it was, we know it wasn't that long ago. I think it was the second Discovery of Witches book. Is that the Shadow of Night? Yeah, and I didn't particularly enjoy that book. I really liked Discovery of Witches, and Shadow of Night, I really like the writing and Deborah Harkness's atmosphere that she creates, but I thought that the story was way too slow. I don't love the characters in that series in general, although I do find it enjoyable. And I'm pretty sure that when I read that book, I said that I can read anything if it's well written. And I feel like this stands for Babel, because I am flying through this. Like, this is not a fast-paced, plot-driven, easy read, but I'm still compelled, and it's been 2 days, guys. It's been like just over 48 hours and I'm 350 pages into this. I've got less than 200 pages to go. But I like Robin, the main character, and he has this like found family, which is the friendship group. And I'm at the point now where like the shit has really hit the fan, because while I know what point this book is trying to make, and God does R.F. Kuang not let me forget it for even a second, I didn't have any idea like what the actual plot of this was going to be. And I feel like I've hit a real turning point in the story, and a lot of the beginning is quite slow. A lot of it is like kind of Robin's day-to-day at Oxford as he's learning about some of like the different kind of groups and like adjusting to being at the college and going through his studies. And I feel like we're really supposed to be getting connected to this friendship group, and honestly like they're fine, but I'm not that attached to them. The plot is interesting, but it's not like blowing my mind, but I do think it's really well written. So I feel like I'm having a good time with this because of the writing, because of the atmosphere. But the story and the characters, I'm not sure that I really care about all that much. I'm still intrigued to see where this goes because I don't really have any idea where it's going. Obviously, colonialism was such a big part of making Britain like what it is today, and like the British Empire, and it's like a massive part of British history and something that like we are still trying to undo. Not necessarily undo, but we are still dealing with the effects of colonialism in 2024. And so I don't think that this fantasy book set in I think we're in like 1837 right now, is going to solve colonialism. Like that isn't the point, even though the point of the book I feel is to really open people's eyes to the effects that colonialism had. And like how far-reaching and like deeply rooted colonialist ideals are still in today's society, and kind of where it, not even where it stemmed from, but like a part when it was like very, very prevalent and very prominent. We're not going to solve colonialism in this book. Like it's not just going to go away. So in terms of the actual plot of this story, like I have no idea where it's going and what kind of conclusion we're going to come to, and I'm intrigued to find out. But do I like the story? I don't know, but I'm having a really good time reading it because I do think that this is very, very well written and it's super compelling. So I would like to finish this today. It is Sunday and I have just under 200 pages left. I think I've got about 180 pages left. It is Baldur's Gate night tonight, so I'm going to be playing Baldur's Gate with Curtis for the majority of the evening. But I have like an hour and 20 minutes until I'm going to start making dinner, and then I'll have a little bit of time before we start playing Baldur's Gate. So like I'm still delulu thinking that I am going to finish this book tonight. I don't know if I am, but I'm not getting anything read sat here chatting to you guys, so I'm going to go dive into this book and see how much we can get through. I finished Babel, and nobody is more shocked than me to say that I didn't hate this book. In fact, I gave it quite a high 4-star rating, and I did get quite emotional towards the end there, and I did not see this coming. And I do definitely think, like, I do definitely have issues with it, and the issues that I have do kind of feed into the worries that I had going into this book, because I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the subject matter. I just think that this book lacks so much subtlety. The beauty of a book like this, or the poignancy of a book like this, is that in my opinion it's supposed to be thought-provoking. It is supposed to provoke discussion. I don't think that this does. I don't think that this provokes discussion. I don't think that it promotes any independent thought, because any point or scene in this book is then followed up immediately by the characters very clearly explaining what happened in that scene and why it happened and how it's racist and how it's a product of colonialism. I just feel like that kind of defeats the point of this kind of very clever knowledge that plays on language and delves into the side of colonialism that is not apparent to us, that is not obvious to us. Obviously, part of the point of this book is to hold up a mirror to the West and say, like, look at what you've done, look at what you still continue to do that comes from these roots. But I also feel like this would be so much more effective if it forced people to look at their own behavior, their own thoughts, like their own actions, and caused them to work it out themselves what was wrong, like figure out why this book was making them feel uncomfortable, instead of being made to feel uncomfortable and then immediately told why you are feeling uncomfortable. Because I feel like the kind of reaction that this book is trying to elicit is so much more powerful if the person reading the book comes to that conclusion by themselves, instead of being told how they're supposed to feel and how they're supposed to think. My favorite thing about this though was the writing. I think that it was wonderfully written. It was super engaging, and the first 200, dare I say 300 pages of this book. It's pretty damn slow, and I was hooked the entire time. Obviously I have a little bit of a time constraint because there is a date that I have in mind for posting this video, but still, like, I didn't want to put this down. Like, I was absorbed, I was sucked in. I think atmospherically it is on point. I do just feel like it's a little bit like R of Kwang is breathing down your neck the entire time you're reading this, and that is what I didn't love about it. I do think it's interesting actually that this book was left not completely open, but more open than I anticipated it being, based on the fact that I'm pretty sure that this is solidly a standalone, but it does actually leave room for growth, and I truly was not expecting that. That being said, I didn't really expect things to also come to such a resounding conclusion as they did in here, and I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed this book so much is that the plot itself took me completely by surprise and went in directions that, realistically, thinking about the Poppy War, I should have kind of expected. But I definitely feel like R of Kwang as a writer has come leaps and bounds within this book. Like, it is so much better written than the Poppy War was, which actually one of my critiques of the Poppy War is that I didn't think it was very well written at all. I am very, very surprised. Like, I'm eating my words here, guys. I'm telling you I was wrong. This is a decent book. It is. I did find the footnotes in here to be a little bit irrelevant because while the story is being narrated by somebody, the person who is narrating this story isn't relevant. It's just like, you know, an ambiguous, anonymous narrator. It's not like a relevant part of the story. So some of them were just translations, but some of the footnotes, as I showed you guys early on in this story, were kind of just reinforcing a point that I'd already gotten that I didn't need. Like, reinforcing and spoon feeding to me. So, like, I definitely have criticisms of it, and the things that annoyed me about this book, they did really annoy me, but I did think that it was really good, and I did not expect to. So our verdict for this one, it's a both. It's a both. We're going to be shelving Babel, but we're also going to be scrapping Babel. I was right in my assumption that I would not enjoy this enough to need to keep 2 copies of it. So I think I really like both of them, but this copy has this cover on the naked hardback, like it has that printed illustration of Babel, and it also has illustrated end pages, whereas this one, while it's really cool in the slipcase, I don't care too much about the naked hardback of this. Edges I like a little bit more on this one as well, and the end papers are nice but like not quite as bougie. So I'm going to be unhauling the Illumicrate edition. This one will be hitting the unhaul pile. I'm just gonna go and put the Fairy Loot edition in the space that I got the Illumicrate edition from, but I think at some point, and it may end up coming up in this video, I had a system of organization for my hardback shelves that doesn't matter anymore because everything got out of hand. Like, I had a shelf per subscription box, but now that I have more books than fit the shelves, the books aren't in any order, so they need at some point all taken off and like just alphabetizing. So for the moment, I'm just gonna put this in the slot that this came out of, but eventually I am gonna have to take all of those books off and get some semblance of organization, because I'm getting to the point now where I'm kind of, when I want to shelve a hardback, I just don't know where it should go. I'm just gonna actually show you while we're here. This is YA Fairy Loot, I think, although I don't know if that's accurate right now. This started off as Goldsborough, but then I got rid of a lot of my Goldsborough books. I only kept a few. So now we also have Lotte Library. But then here, we currently have Illumicrate. So actually, I feel like I'm keeping to the shelves pretty well. This is all book of the month. This was Adult Fairy Loot, and this is actually the issue because I ran out of space because I've got so many copies of Empire of the Vampire and Empire of the Damned. So I had to bring these two up from the bottom onto here. I also have like all of my Olivia Blake books are next to each other. So this is no longer Adult Fairy Loot shelf. It's pretty much just Olivia Blake and then whatever else will fit. So, hey. I don't feel like it's quite as bad as I thought that it was, but I do still feel like it needs a more cohesive form of organization to be sorted out at some other date. But now we are going to find out what our 4th book for this vlog is going to be. I am hoping for something small. I'm hoping for something pacey. I've read 2 quite chunky books in this video, and then the other book that I read wasn't short either, you know? So I don't know what exactly I'm hoping for, but just shorter would be great. If nothing else, just shorter. So moving on from this community shelf space, let's see if roll number 5 is going to finally give me something a little bit more manageable. That is 5. Oh, great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chance cards. Now, I do know that I have, before we started this game, I went through these and I did make them relevant to the stacks. So this has an equal number of books that I'm excited to read from the stacks and an equal amount of books that I'm not excited to read. I'm just gonna shuffle them a little bit. I hate it here today. I really do. What does that even say? Oh, this is one that I don't want to read. This could be a good thing. So Bookopoly is being really quite rude to me this time around, and I'm upset about it because I was like, let's play Bookopoly. It'll be fun. And have I had a choice? The only choice that I've had in the 4 prompts that we've had so far is whether I read A Tempest of Tea or A Fate Inked in Blood, and actually that wasn't a choice because Tempest of Tea was not a fantasy romance, so my only choice was whether I read one book to fulfill both prompts or whether I did it in 2. So we might as well have just randomly generated for all of the choice that I've had with the books that I've read for this video. But I'm going to be reading Fire with Fire by Destiny Soraya. Maybe not a terrible thing, even though I absolutely don't want to read it. It's 424 pages, so not all that short, but the text is quite large. So this is about 2 sisters called Dani and Eden Rivera that were born to kill dragons, but one of them doesn't care about dragon slaying. She just wants a normal life. And the other one is like, not obsessed, but like she dedicates her life to slaying dragons. And then the kind of change to the status quo in this book is that Dani, who is the one who wants a normal life, ends up forging a rare and magical soul bond with a dragon that puts her like on the wrong side of whatever this world is, because obviously like her and her sister are supposed to slay dragons and now she is bonded to one. So I've just looked this up on Goodreads. The average rating is 3.78, which isn't awful, but I just feel like I have such a lack of interest in this one because the synopsis is, it sounds kind of, I don't want to say it sounds kind of bland. There's nothing in it that's like really hooking me in. This one was a YA fairy loot book as well. This one is from June 2021. So we'll just give it a try. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll love it because I didn't want to read Babel either. Only time will tell. Okay, so I am 52 pages into this. I think it's going to be a DNF. I'm torn because it's not like I'm hating it, but I also just have this really strong gut feeling that this is going to be a 3-star read that I forget about. And if that is the case, I don't really want to waste my time, especially because I have just filmed a couple of videos where I had to talk about books that I've read earlier in the year, and I'm like, I can no longer remember what these are about. I don't really want to be adding to my roster of forgettable 3 stars. It is a contemporary fantasy, which I did not know going into this, and I think that that is partially why I feel like I'm not gonna love this one. I feel like it's very accessible in terms of that, so it's very easy to get into. And we have this almost sibling rivalry because the sister, who's actually the younger sister, they're not twins, the younger sister is more gifted at dragon slaying than the elder one is, but the elder one is more dedicated to it, so it's like obviously quite upsetting for her. And then the younger one is just kind of wanting to escape into a normal life but ends up bonded to this dragon. I think that it's decently written as well for a contemporary fantasy, but also something that's putting me off a little bit is that it's the feeling I'm getting when I'm reading it is it's reminding me of Infinity Son by Adam Silvera, and I hate that book. I hate it. So I think I don't think it's for me. I think we're gonna roll again. I'm gonna go for roll 6. Oh, this is, I'll be back in a second with the roll, but I have to take this call, so I'm gonna do that in between. So that last one was a poorly chosen chance card. Let's see if for our potentially final roll, I can actually choose the book that I read. That would be delightful. 5, so it is the final roll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is other. So it's any genre that isn't already on the board. So essentially any genre that is not fantasy, sci-fi, fantasy romance, or romance, which is of course most of the things that I own. This ain't gonna be easy, I can tell you that for nothing. Let's see what we got down here. All of these are fantasy, sci-fi, fantasy. All of the ones, like this is dark academia, I think. Oh no, that one is definitely fantasy. Like A Study in Drowning is dark academia, but also like it's fantasy. Do we just have one choice again? I'm not sure what this is, but I really just could do with not reading this now. Bats of the Republic by Zachary Thomas Dodson. I think once again, we literally only have one choice, which is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So once again, Bookopoly gave me absolutely no choices. This is the last time, guys. I hope you didn't enjoy this video because we're never doing it again. But for other, I have picked Mexican Gothic, which is 301 pages, so it is shorter than what everything else that I've read for this vlog. This one I would say is a horror, a suspense. I think that this is following a woman whose cousin invites her to her home because she thinks her husband is trying to kill her. Yeah, it says that she claims that her husband is poisoning her. So the main character goes to this house to help her cousin, and I think that the house itself is a presence. It's reminded me a lot of The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, which is a book that I read, I think, for the last Shelve It or Scrap It, the last episode. I don't think that they're going to be the same, but they are both Gothic horrors, and they do both concern like big scary manor houses that have their own presence. I've heard very divisive things about this. I do really like Gothic fiction, so I hope that I enjoy it, but I know Silvia Moreno Garcia is quite hit and miss for some people. I really liked Gods of Jade and Shadow, but I do know that most of their books are very different, so just because I liked that one really doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to enjoy this one, but I really hope that I do because this has been an anticipated one for me for a long time.
In the pill I can't swallow, and it comes but it won't last.
So I am about to go and get my workout in. I've done sprints today with my patrons. I've also been to have tinsel added to my hair, ready for Taylor Swift this week, which is very, very exciting. And I've also, where is it? One there and one there. I've been double jabbed today because when I went to Thailand, I got my hepatitis A vaccine, I think. And then if you get a booster 6 months after that, then it lasts for like 20 years. So I went to get my booster just because, like, I mean, I might as well. And she checked what vaccines I needed for all of my other trips that I have coming up in the next year. And I got my typhoid as well. So I've been double jabbed and double tinseled. And I have also read some of Mexican Gothic. Speaking of Zanzibar, though, only 7 spots left if you want to come with us. Link in description always. But back to the book. Not having a great time. I'm not having a great time. I am 128 pages into this and I'm kind of bored. It's flashing back to Last Tale of the Flower Bride, guys, where like the atmosphere, I'm saying I'm not enjoying it as much as I did in the Last Tale of the Flower Bride right now. So it's about this woman whose father receives a letter from her cousin that's essentially full of nonsense, and he's really worried about her because the man that she married, they don't know a whole ton about, aside from that they don't have very much money. So he sends his daughter, because he thinks it's a matter that's like better handled by women. It's like the 1950s. He sends his daughter to this remote house on top of a hill in this tiny town to see what's happening to the cousin, and the cousin's kind of a little bit all over the place, but the family is saying that she's got TB. The doctor comes in, and it's like an English family, so this girl who's the main character's cousin has married into an English family, and they're very particular. So like they have an English doctor that they've like brought in who's the only doctor that ever sees them. They have like an English house. They imported soil from Europe so that they can have an English garden, and the doctor says she's got TB, but it doesn't seem like symptoms of TB, so the main character is suspicious. And all the while that she's staying in this house, the house doesn't have a presence the way that the house in Last Tale of the Flower Bride does, but the house seems to have some kind of effect on the people who stay in it, because the main character is starting to have some very disturbing nightmares involving the house and like particular figures, like a golden woman. And it's almost similar to what potentially her cousin is experiencing, because her cousin is saying that there's like people talking to her out of the walls and things like that. I'm just pretty bored. Silvia Moreno Garcia does not have the most engaging writing style for me. It's quite plain and to the point. Like, it's not a flowery writing style at all, and it's not that I find it hard to follow, because it's not dense or difficult in any way, shape or form, but like at points in this book, like I'm hooked and I'm like, okay, this is super interesting. And then I'll realize that 5 pages have passed and I don't have a clue what's happened because I haven't been paying attention. And I was talking about this in sprints actually, and Hannah said it's almost like the thing that's happening to the main character in this book is happening to me. It's also reminded me a little bit of the Shirley Jackson book, is it The Haunting of Hill House? And also some slight elements of Rebecca, which I think it's compared to in, I don't know if it's like on Goodreads or something, but I've definitely seen it compared to Rebecca somewhere. And like I'm getting hints of that, but I wouldn't say that that's the like dominant thing that it's kind of given right now. So I do feel like this is going to be a case of Last Tale of the Flower Bride, where it is kind of slow to build and then the ending is better. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for at this point, because I'm not having the best time, but I am hoping to get to at least page 200 tonight, and then I can potentially finish it off tomorrow. So I will hopefully be giving you my final thoughts soon, because it's only 300 pages that I'm almost halfway through. I feel like I am gonna commit to this one, especially because it's a horror, and I feel like the payoff with this, like with Last Tale of the Flower Bride, is going to be towards the end of the book. So like I kind of need to get there to kind of see what the fuss is about. But I don't think it's going to be the highly rated book that I thought it was going to be when I've had this on my TBR for so long. So I do kind of wish that I DNF'd this one now because I've just finished Mexican Gothic and it just wasn't for me. I was right that this is like the Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and that in the last 100 pages the pace of this really ramped up. We had a lot of reveals, we got some answers as to what was behind the, like, I guess horror elements in this book. And the horror element that was revealed, I'm not going to tell you guys because I do feel like it's something, especially if you want to go into a book blind, it is more of a reveal later down the line, although the hints are there early on. But it is not something that I particularly enjoy or have ever wanted to read. And if I'd have known that that was the horror element in here, then I probably wouldn't have picked this up or would have been a lot more reluctant about it. All I knew about this going in was that it was a Gothic horror, and as I've mentioned, I am a fan of Gothic fiction in general. So in terms of horror as a genre, actually, it's not a genre that I have read a lot from as of yet, and it is something that I'm looking to explore, but at this point I just don't feel like I've really found my footing. But what I am discovering with the more that I read is that I very much prefer more like thriller adjacent kind of horrors, or things like slashers tend to be what I rate quite highly, whereas this that kind of really blends the line between reality and kind of ambiguity is not for me. We know across all fiction I don't like things where I can't tell what's real, and I feel like I was really getting lost in here, maybe in quite a clever way, because the places where I was losing interest is where the main character was dreaming or experiencing like things like hallucinations, I guess. But it just wasn't to my tastes. I also don't love Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing style. I do really struggle to find myself immersed in the book. By the end of this, I was really struggling to want to continue. The last 25 to 30 pages of this book were hard, but at that point I was like, there's no point me DNFing, like I might as well see where this book leads. But I definitely think that this is more of a me problem than anything else, because the specific things that unraveled in this book are things that I typically don't enjoy or wouldn't have wanted to read had I known that they were in here. Content warnings in here for sexual assault and also abuse, and it does also have some quite almost gory depictions of some pretty disgusting things. Like I was trying to read this when I was eating my lunch and that was a massive mistake, let me tell you. So I am very firmly going to be scrapping this one. I am sad because this is a book that was highly anticipated, one that I thought that I was gonna love, but I didn't actually know what it entailed, and if I'd have known what it entailed, then it would not have been highly anticipated by me, because no, like it just really gave me the ick. In terms of it being a horror though, like it definitely did its job. I was horrified, but I was not having a good time. In conclusion, for episode 5, because we made it to the end, this was a rough one, guys. This one really tested me, but in total, I guess in total actually, we have scrapped 5 books, because I have scrapped at least 1 copy of Babel, even though I did shelve the Fairy Loot edition. So in terms of clearing through things, we've done a really good job. I think that it's an interesting one as well. This one I'm not too surprised that I DNF'd, and actually thinking back on it now, if I could kind of do it again with hindsight and known what was coming, I feel like this one should have been DNF'd, and this one, I think if I'd have persevered, it would probably still have been a 3-star rating, but maybe one that I thought about more fondly than I'm gonna think about this one. The biggest shocks to me was that I did not enjoy this one and that I did enjoy this one. I did not anticipate that. And then this one, I'm glad that we got through it, but a 700-page book to start us off was just not ideal, let's be honest. So I think we did pretty well, and we've also had some quite eye-opening results this time around. The next episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, we should be going back to normal. It should be a regular episode, and I think that you can expect it in your subscription feed towards the middle to end of July, if that's something that you guys need to know. But that pretty much wraps this one up. It was definitely a long one, so I do hope you've enjoyed this one if you made it this far. Next week we have a little daily one that I filmed throughout the course of Shelve It or Scrap It. It's just a little productive day in the life of a content creator kind of thing, so keep your eyes peeled for that if you are at all interested. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this one if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're real go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.